many horrific accusations though involving young singers, young like children.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's insane.
He makes R. Kelly look like a decent guy.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
It is crazy. And meanwhile, the guy was like hanging out with Oprah, hanging out with Obama.
Jay-Z,
everybody.
I'm sure the Clintons were there at some point.
Maybe. But
what if everything you thought you knew about fame was a lie? Imagine a world where bright-eyed teens step into the spotlight with dreams of stardom, only to be swallowed by a machine that cares more about money than their well-being. What if one of the most famous child stars of our generation had been part of that machine, and no one said a word? Until now. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video. It is free and help us bring you enjoyable content. And of course, watch till the end. Joe Rogan, the man known for his unfiltered opinions, wild stories, and bro-science debates, recently hit pause on the jokes, literally. No quirky sound effects. No rolling laughs. Just a camera, a microphone, and one of the most haunting monologues ever delivered on his show. He wasn't ranting about vaccines, MMA, or Bigfoot. This time, he was talking about Justin Bieber. More specifically, about the alleged power Diddy held over a 15-year-old Bieber. And how nobody, not Hollywood, not the fans, not even the media, dared to question it. Grab your coffee. This one's not easy, but it's a story that might just change how you see celebrity culture forever. Joe Rogan isn't known for silence. That's why when he began his episode without a word, not even a "hey folks," fans immediately felt the tension. There was no neon sign flashing, "this is serious," but it might as well have been. He sat, eyes focused, jaw tight, with a folder that looked like it had been through a war. "I've been doing this show for a long time," he said finally, "but this is something else." The folder? It wasn't just papers, it was photos, transcripts, resurfaced video clips. Receipts, as the internet would later call them. And it all began with one. A grainy 2009 interview clip where Diddy, smiling, says, "I'm gonna take Justin Bieber for 48 hours. The crowd laughed. The interviewer moved on. But Joe hit pause and asked the question that's been quietly haunting people for years. What really happened during those 48 hours? Curious yet? Because it only gets more uncomfortable from here. Justin Bieber's rise to fame is the stuff of pop culture legend. Discovered on YouTube by Scooter Braun, mentored by Usher, and suddenly headlining arenas while most of us were still fumbling through high school algebra. But while fans screamed, an industry moved fast behind the scenes. And that's where Diddy came in. Joe laid it out like a detective, calmly, factually, like he was building a case. In 2009, Diddy began inserting himself into Bieber's life. Public appearances, interviews, mentorship. But not the "let's go over your vocals" kind. More like the "come live in my world" kind. Rogan didn't accuse. He simply asked, why was one of the most powerful men in hip-hop suddenly so invested in a 15-year-old pop prodigy? It's the kind of question that's uncomfortable to ask, but impossible to ignore. Joe then moved into what he called the pattern. This wasn't just about Justin. He rattled off names, some known, some whispered. Young talents who were either connected to or influenced by Diddy at critical points in their careers. There was a common thread. All of them were underage when Diddy came into the picture. All of them were male. And all of them, according to Rogan's research, eventually faded from the spotlight, some abruptly, some tragically. He played more clips. Photos at private parties. Social media posts that seemed innocent, until they weren't. "I'm not saying anything illegal happened," Joe clarified, "but I'm saying something happened. And the fact that nobody talks about it, that's the most chilling part." Ever had that moment when your gut just drops? That's what this section felt like. The most disturbing part of the podcast was when Joe revisited that original 48-hour statement. With help from internet sleuths and a bit of his own team's research, Rogan pieced together what those 2 days looked like. It started with a luxury party in LA, where Bieber arrived alone, no parents, no management. Then a private jet to Miami. Then a night out, away from cameras, followed by a day where no one seemed to know where Justin was. "Imagine you're 15-year-old, Joe said, being taken across state lines by a grown man you barely know, into clubs, onto yachts, and being surrounded by people 3 times their age, and no one asking a single question about it. He paused. Then he asked, why didn't anyone protect him? And that, friends, is when it hit different. Where were Justin's parents? His label? His friends? Rogan didn't blame, but he did wonder. You've got a teenager suddenly worth millions, surrounded by executives, agents, producers, and not one person steps in to say, maybe let's not let Diddy fly him out alone for 2 days. He mentioned how, in later interviews, Justin alluded to feeling out of control during those early years. Addiction, depression, suicidal thoughts. You think that starts out of nowhere? Joe asked. Or do you think it begins the moment a kid realizes he's just a product? It was a gut punch question, the kind that echoes long after it's asked. This part of the podcast went full conspiracy, but it was hard to look away. Joe dissected Bieber's lyrics, songs like Lonely, What Do You Mean, and even Boyfriend. He played clips, pointing out what he believed were coded cries for help. Lines like, everyone knows my name now / but something about it still feels strange. What do you mean? / when you nod your head yes / but you want to say no, was it just pop? Or was it confession? Rogan didn't say yes or no, but he asked listeners to consider the idea that maybe, just maybe, Bieber had been trying to speak out all along and nobody was really listening. You ever get chills from a song you've heard 1,000 times? Yeah, that? This wasn't just a Diddy story. Or a Bieber story. Joe widened the lens. He listed other young stars, Aaron Carter, Britney Spears, Macaulay Culkin, all famous young, all celebrated, all spiraling in adulthood. Different stories, same pattern, too much too soon, surrounded by the wrong people, silenced when they asked for help. And the common theme? Industry protection. If these big machines admit wrongdoing, they collapse, Joe explained. So they protect the abuser, not the abused. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? So where is Justin now? Married. Out of the spotlight. Posting Bible verses and taking time off. Rogan suggested this isn't just rest, it's recovery. A slow, quiet climb back to normalcy after years of damage. And maybe, just maybe, Joe sharing this story was a way of helping him. Because the truth is, the world watched Bieber grow up, but it never truly protected him. Here's where it got even deeper. Joe admitted he'd been sitting on this for months. He'd seen the clips, heard the rumors. But what pushed him over the edge? A conversation with a fellow comedian who casually mentioned the Diddy thing as if it were common knowledge. That's when it hit me, Rogan said. We all know. We've all heard. And we all just accept it. That, he said, was no longer okay. Since the episode dropped, there's been a strange mix of outrage, silence, and speculation. Diddy's camp offered no statement. Bieber's reps declined to comment. Social media exploded, with fans divided between defending their idols and demanding answers. But one thing was clear, Joe Rogan had cracked something open. And the world was watching. If you're still reading, you probably feel what many felt listening to Joe's episode, disturbed, curious, angry, maybe even guilty. Because we laughed at the interviews. We liked the photos. We sang the songs. But did we ever ask, is this kid okay? It's easy to forget that celebrities are human. Especially when they're smiling, selling records, and posting selfies. But behind the lights, behind the fame, there's often pain. Real pain. And if Joe Rogan taught us anything in that hour of uncomfortable truth, it's this. Maybe it's time we start listening, really listening, to the people behind the pop. This story isn't over. In fact, it's probably just beginning. Have you ever noticed something that seemed off about how young stars are treated? Do you think there's a bigger story behind the headlines? Or are we reading too much into it? Backhand index pointing down, drop your thoughts. Share this article. Keep the conversation going. Because if there's one thing Joe Rogan made clear, it's that silence can be the most dangerous lie of all.